47% of people in the UK don't feel confident about their financial literacy. And much of this is related to myths about credit scores and how they impact your mortgage. So today, with the help of Martin Lewis, I'm going to talk you through credit scores and even show you how to get a free copy of your credit report. So stay tuned because there's a lot of really important information and you will learn a lot during this video.
Credit score, why am I being rejected? First thing, electoral roll information. If you're not on it, often it'll kibosh applications.
The electoral roll or the voters roll, if possible, make sure that you're on the voters roll, because what they can then do, if you are on the voters roll, they can do an electronic verification of where you live. So it may reduce some of the items a mortgage broker requests from you, and it will also boost your credit score.
You've got all the public records, the bad stuff about debt, CCJs or the equivalent in Scotland. Now they stay on your file for 6 years. So if they're about to wipe, wait to apply until it's gone.
And this ties into the fact that you want to make sure that you speak to a mortgage broker at least 6 months before you need to apply for a mortgage. And as a rule, especially if you are just an everyday citizen, as a rule, you should check your credit score at least once per year. And at the end of this video, I will show you how to download your credit score. But it's important that you check it regularly because there may be some things on your credit score that you're not aware of. There may be some items that have been misrepresented. Someone may have done fraud on your account. There's a lot of different things that can happen. And so you want to make sure that you know what's going on with your credit score.
Then you've got searches. That's applications you've made. They only stay on your file for 1 year, but still spread them out. Don't do too many in a short space of time. Linked data. Have you got a joint bank account or mortgage? If you do, then the person you're joint with, their file can be looked at when you're being assessed. So don't get a joint product with someone who's got a bad credit history. Then all the stuff you'd expect, your account data. So all the credit products and whether you're paying them in time, but also things like gas and electricity direct debits, monthly mobile phones, monthly car insurance, their loan products too, they go on your file. And they've just started in some areas putting renting on. May not sound too good, but actually it means if you pay your rent on time, it'll boost your credit file.
Yeah, so those are all the different things that will appear on your credit file. And
now, Martin, loads of people have been getting in touch to say, what do you do if there's an error on your file?
Well, first of all, you contact the company who the error's with directly, whoever's put it on, and say, can you get rid of it? If they say no or they dispute it, then you write to the credit reference agency asking to put a notice of correction on, which is where you briefly explain why you think it shouldn't be there. That can slow applications down, but it can also help you get accepted. And at the same time, you then appeal to the Financial Ombudsman Service and ask it to get rid of that default if it shouldn't.
So now what happens if you find out that there is something on your credit report that shouldn't be there or that is incorrect? This happened to one of my clients recently where someone had fraudulently taken out an O2 account in that person's name. They were notified by O2 that something had gone wrong. They spoke to O2. O2 was able to verify that it was fraud. O2 had said that they were going to take that item off the credit report, but they didn't. So when they started talking to me, it came up. So what they had to do is contact O2, get O2 to update the credit report, remove that item. It can take 4 to 6 weeks for it to actually fully update. So that's why you want to make sure that you're talking to a mortgage broker well in advance, because the other thing is, especially with specialist lenders, they will look at what's happened in the past as far as missed payments or late payments. But what they're probably going to want to see is that you haven't had any missed or late payments within the last 6 months. If you have a default, the best thing you can do is clear that default. It will then show up on your credit report as an S, which is satisfied. Even specialist lenders want to see that whatever has happened, there is some distance between when it happened and when you're applying for the mortgage. So that 6-month term that I suggest that people use in advance of applying for the mortgage or applying for any kind of credit, there's a reason behind that. The reason why I say 6 months is because if you do find something, you need some time to correct it. If you are late or behind in payments, currently it gives you those 6 months to be able to refresh that and put some distance between you and the missed or late payment. Now, you're probably wondering, well, where do I see all of this stuff? Now, most bank accounts do provide a credit score. So you can see briefly your credit score. It's either from Equifax or Experian. But as a mortgage broker and pretty much any financial expert that you speak to, they will advise that you get a multi-agency credit report. The best place to get that multi-agency credit report would be Check My File. So I'm going to show you how to download that Check My File credit report, because what it's going to do, it's going to show you everything about your credit profile. It will show you, where you've lived. It will show hard and soft searches. It will show any missed late payments, defaults, CCJs, anything like that. And this is valuable information, particularly when you are applying for a mortgage. So I'm going to show you how to download that report. And as I said, you should check your report at least once a year. So it's good to stay subscribed to Check My File. But if you just need it for a mortgage and you decide you need to cancel it, guess what? I'm going to show you how to cancel that as well. All right, excuse the technical issues, but we are here. And, if you spend any time online, you will see the gurus, the property gurus, the get rich quick gurus. Everybody's telling you how to do something. Today, we will be talking about some property investing strategies and also understanding a little bit more about how you can get a buy-to-let mortgage. I am really excited to have a special guest today. He's someone that I met last year and has quickly become one of those people that is a go-to person for information. It's Tapiwa. Tapiwa is an entrepreneur and investor with interest in property and social care, namely supported living, as well as investing in property for the last 2 decades, so that's 20 years. He is the founder of Parkhill Support, a supported living provider supporting a variety of people, including those living with autism, learning disabilities, and mental health issues and challenging behavior. He's also the founder of the Supported Living Academy, through which mentors, coaches, and supporters and other providers can start and grow their supported living business. Now, Tapiwa will be sharing a lot of information, and so make sure that if you do have questions, you put the questions in the chat, and we will pick up on that credit thing later on. But for now, I just want to talk to you about some of the key things or key questions that I get asked by people who are considering going into investing in property. My name is Anthony Lindsay, and my phone rings all the time, so I should always turn it off. My name's Anthony Lindsay, and I've been in finance for over 30 years. I've done everything from wealth management to collections to lending. And I approach mortgages and I approach what I do in a very unique way. If you look at the hierarchy of needs, shelter is one of those things that is very important. So I view helping someone get a mortgage, put their family in a home, as something that is really important, just in the grand scheme of things. But if you're looking to invest or get a buy-to-let property, this is the place to be. So one of the key things for you to understand when you're looking at getting a buy-to-let mortgage is that your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up your repayments on your mortgage. So getting into the property is just the first step. The basics of getting any mortgage, I've broken down into something that I call CID. So it's your credit profile, your income, and your deposit. In other videos that I have on the channel, I talk about how to improve your credit profile. I talk about the difference between your credit profile and your credit score. I talk about ways of generating additional income. And Tapiwa will be also talking about some property strategies. And I also talk about your deposit. Now, if you're considering getting a buy-to-let mortgage, one thing that you want to think about is, are you a first-time landlord? So as with most things that are finance related, there aren't just yes or no. there are different levels of criteria. So when you approach a mortgage broker or approach your bank and ask them a question around a buy-to-let mortgage, always understand that there are so many different variations. You will find that some lenders will not lend to what they call first-time buyer, first-time landlords. So what they want to do is they want to see that you've had a mortgage, a residential mortgage, or some type of mortgage in the past. That's not to say you won't be able to get a buy-to-let mortgage, but it will just reduce the total number of lenders that will be able to provide you with a mortgage. Another thing to think about is, are you a high rate taxpayer? Some of the criteria for your buy-to-let mortgage will be different based on the fact that you're a high rate taxpayer. And you want to think about the rental income. What I mean by that is, if you get a buy-to-let mortgage, and let's just say you're paying £1,000 a month for that mortgage, the lender wants to see that the rental income, the fair market value of rental income in that area, is usually about 35 to 45% higher than the mortgage that you're paying. So as you go out and try to find a property, think about where it's located, think about how much you'll be able to get in rental income. A question that people ask quite frequently now, because it's all over the internet, is the question around, should I buy through a limited company or SPV? Now, I'm not here to give you accounting advice or tax advice, so I do recommend that if you're asking that question, what you want to do is you want to go to an accountant, but I would recommend that you go to someone who specializes in property. Not all accountants are created equally. Although some will dabble in property, it's much better if you go to someone who specializes in property, that they can give you the proper advice. In speaking to that professional, you have to be very open, you have to be very honest, and explain what your long-term goals are. So understanding your long-term goals will help that professional give you the best advice. They'll be able to explain to you whether it's best to just buy it in your personal name, through a limited company, or through an SPV. Consider the additional costs. So if you're a first-time landlord, don't think of it as a get-rich-quick strategy. Investing in property is risky if you don't know what you're doing. Some people win big, but some people lose big. And it's also not something that will happen overnight. So be prepared to surround yourself with people that can give you the right advice, people that can maybe do the renovations, people who know what they're doing. Don't just rely on friends and family on weekends to come in and assist you. Make sure that you're working with professionals, and always be willing to pay professionals professional prices. So don't try to get things on the cheap, because quite often in the long run, it will end up costing you more. And be prepared to be in it for the long haul. Not everybody's going to purchase a property, flip it, and make money on it. So the key stage is, once you do decide that you are going to get a buy-to-let mortgage and many other mortgage types, is the financial assessment. So you'll speak to a mortgage broker. They'll do a financial review and assessment. And if you've noticed, I have said speak to a broker. The reason why you want to speak to a broker is you'll get more choice. You'll have access to more products. When you go directly to the bank, the banking advisor can only speak to you about that bank's products. So they may be giving you their best rate, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're getting the best rate. Once the broker's done a financial assessment and understood what your goals are, they'll be able to produce an agreement in principle for you. Some people call it a decision in principle. Some people call it a mortgage in principle. It's essentially a document that will say about how much that bank, in theory, would be willing to lend. But keep in mind, an agreement in principle isn't necessarily going to take into account everything, because you can go online. I could get someone an agreement in principle for £1 million right now, because it's not asking you to verify the information. It's just doing a calculation. Once you have the agreement in principle and have an idea of how much you can borrow, you can go out and search for the property that you want. Once you find the property, you're going to need to then negotiate and get an offer accepted. Once that offer is accepted, you move from the agreement in principle stage to the actual mortgage offer. A way of thinking about it is the agreement in principle is based pretty much just on you as the individual or the person making the purchase, whereas the mortgage offer now includes the property details. So you may find that you had an agreement in principle that a bank would lend a certain amount, but when you move into the mortgage agreement stage, they may say, well, we'll lend to you, but we might not lend on this property. So keep that in mind. And it's always good to have your mortgage broker involved in the purchase process, because they may be able to identify things that may be problematic when you get to the mortgage application stage. Beyond that, you're going to have your legal work, exchange of contracts, and then completion. It's always good to get a solicitor involved as early as possible, because the purchase process can be the process of hurry up and wait. So nothing happens for a long time, and then things move very quickly. And when they're asking you for your solicitor's details, that's not the time to start looking for a solicitor. So what are the next steps if you're looking to get a buy-to-let mortgage? Get an AIP, start house hunting, and don't forget to tell a friend. I'm about to bring in my special guest, Tapiwa. As I said, he's someone that I met and is very knowledgeable in his area, and he has an extensive knowledge about a lot of things. So I'm excited about the conversation we're going to be having. But before I overemphasize who he is, I'll give Tapiwa an opportunity to introduce himself. Hey, it's really good to have you on the show this evening. How are you doing?
I'm doing very good, Anthony. Thank you so much for thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited. It's always good when we catch up, so I'm excited about what we're going to get into today.
Yes. So I gave that introduction at the beginning of the show, but one of the things that I didn't mention is you are in your profile, you talk a lot about family life. So you're not one of these people that is just work, work, work. You actually value having a work life a work life balance. So tell me a little bit about that.
I mean, it depends who you're asking. You know, if you're asking my family, they might tell you that I do work, work, work all the time. But you know, they like to eat as well, so we have to do what we have to do. Look, at the end of the day, well, for me anyway, the reason I work is for family, right? You know, as a my own belief system, and this is my own personal belief system. I'm not saying anybody else has to believe it. I'm a provider, I'm a protector. So, you know, I have to work by the sweat of thy brow shall thou eat bread, right? So, you know, you have to go out there, you have to make things happen, you have to work, you have to believe in yourself, even when people are telling you things are impossible. But, you know, have that little bit of faith to say that, you know what, even if it is impossible, I'm still going to try. And sometimes the impossible becomes possible simply because of having that faith and pushing through. So, yes, you have to work. I try and work a little bit and balance that with family life as well. I've got 4 kids. So, you know, making sure that I'm available for all of them isn't always easy. But it's something that's very important for me. It's certainly something that I strive to try and achieve as much as possible.
You said something that to me just described what a man should be. So you're a protector, you're a provider, you don't let what people tell you deter you from doing a thing. And as the father of 4, to me, that's a good role model. That's a good example to set for your children and even for your community. And you talk a lot about community as well, which is another thing that resonated with me. I have adapted something which is biblical, but
Mhm.
I approach things as for me and my house. And
Right.
I break that down as for me as an individual. So making sure that I as an individual, I take care of my health, I take care of my mental, I take care of my spiritual. Because without me being a strong individual as a person within myself, I can't then move to my house. So
Mhm.
I won't have the energy for my daughters, or I won't have the energy to be able to give my wife the attention that she needs and she deserves. So I think that's from the very first conversation when we were first introduced. We had those shared values
Yeah.
that then can be projected into the things that we do when we talk about business. So on the business side of things, Tapiwa, how would you describe yourself and what is it that you do?
Let me start with how I describe myself. I would describe myself as a nonconformist, a bit of a, maybe not a rule breaker, but certainly somebody who will bend the rules as much as possible. Never do anything illegal. Don't get me wrong. Don't misunderstand me. Don't misquote me. But certainly, you know, if something can't be done, let's say, for example, I've got a couple of things I'm working on now. People are saying, "Oh, there's no it can be done before financial year end," and we're talking now in mid-March, financial year end, obviously at the beginning of April. And I'm saying, yeah, okay, maybe normally you can't, but maybe there are ways that we can adjust certain things and maybe not spend too much time on certain things, or maybe do some of the things post close, so that we can get things done before the financial year. So I'm a great believer in making the impossible possible. So I would say that that's who I am from a business perspective. In terms of what I do, the primary thing I do a few different things, but the primary thing I do is I run supported living companies. So we support people with various needs, various vulnerable people. So people from people with mental health needs, people with learning disabilities, people with autism, some people with physical needs or complex needs, and some people with challenging behaviors as well. So that's the main thing that I do day to day. And then I'll also invest in other things in and around that. But yeah, the primary thing I do is supported living.
Okay, so I hear a lot of people talking about supported living, especially in the mortgage space, because people want to purchase properties in order to facilitate supported living. If you could explain, and to people that are listening that don't know that much about it, could you just kind of explain a little bit more about what it is? And is there actually a need for more places that provide those services?
Great question. So supported living, there's two sides to it. There's the care provider side. So that's the people, the organizations that are actually looking after those people. Care providers. And then you've got the accommodation provider side, which is where you're providing accommodation for people. So that may be anything from, let's say, care leavers or asylum seekers or ex-servicemen. And these are people that may or may not need any other care. There may be just people like me and you that maybe, have turned 16, 17 and have left a foster care placement, for example, because they're now too old, but need a little bit of support in terms of maintaining their tenancies, maintaining their housing, and transitioning into full independence. That's a type of supported living. And there's a whole range of different types of supported living, certainly from the property side. Over the last couple of years, a lot of people have come into supported living as an investment model. Primarily, I think, because to a degree it is seen, and I stress it is seen as, I'm not saying it is, I'm not saying it isn't, it is seen as being recession proof. So what do I mean by that? If we look at COVID, when the Prime Minister said, all of your HMO tenants or whoever didn't have to pay rent, because that was just the decision that the government made. Obviously, a lot of us that have properties and had properties at the time kind of panicked, because if we're not receiving rent, how are we going to pay our mortgages? How are we going to pay our costs? How are we going to, maintain our properties? During that time, a lot of regular landlords, for lack of a better word, noticed that the supported living landlords were still earning money, were still getting paid. And because of that, a lot of people obviously wanted to protect their investments and protect the value in their investments. So a lot of people started to transition towards supported living. Add to that Article 4, Section 24, and all of these other
Here we
things.
go. See, this is what you professionals do. You throw out these things that not everybody that's watching will understand. So let me just rewind. You use the term, which is HMO, and one of the things that I found, and this is one of the key reasons why I released my most recent book, which is A Mortgage is a Really Big Loan. I will have the description in the link, is because there are a lot of terms that are bantied about in society. And quite often, as an adult, you feel that you should know what the thing is, but you don't. So you said something about an HMO. Could you just explain what an HMO is?
Of course. So HMO stands for House in Multiple Occupation. And that differs slightly between each local authority or each borough that you may be in. Typically, it's a house that has 3 or more people living in it who are not family or not related, or they're not sharing it as friends, for example. They are separate households that just happen to live under the same roof. Everyone has their own room, and maybe they share some facilities, for example, a kitchen. That is typically an HMO. There will be some nuances from county to county or from borough to borough in terms of what they define as an HMO, but typically it's just a shared house. It's not even a fancy word. It's just a acronym for a shared house. And unfortunately, in supported living and in social care, we have a whole range of acronyms. So I apologize in advance if I get carried away. But please do pull me up, and I can just clarify what things are for everybody's benefit.
Okay, and around the HMO, I know that in certain parts of London, even where I live, you have these houses that have were really big houses, so the older houses. And what people have done is they have separated those out either into apartments, or you see these skips in front of these houses where they're converting these into HMOs. So it has been a strategy that a lot of people have used to generate wealth, to generate a pension pot, because for a lot of people, it is a pension pot. So you spoke about HMOs, and now for those people who had heard the term but didn't really know what it was, thank you for explaining that. Then you got into some article of some article of some article. What was that you were talking about?
So Article 4 is again related to the whole HMO thing. So in again, it varies from borough to borough, from county to county. But each local authority, because they want to preserve their housing stock and preserve the nature of the housing they have in their areas, in some places they are no longer allowing people to just convert their properties into HMOs just like that, without any level of planning or without going through a process. And in some cases, they won't even allow you to go through the process. So previously, I could just buy a big house, big 3-bedroom detached house or semi-detached, extend the garden, convert one of the receptions, do a loft conversion, and all of a sudden, what was a 3-bedroom house is now a 5 or 6-bedroom house. And I could just do that. I could just literally go and do that under permitted development or PD. See, I did it the other way there. So
yeah, thank you for that.
But now that's changed, or at least it's changed in some areas. So you always need to check within the area that you're looking to invest in what the rules are for that particular area, and make sure that you're not trying to do something that you'll spend a lot of money, get to the end of it, and then the local authorities planning department will tell you that now you've got to undo it all or spend even more money for it to be approved before you can actually let that out.
And you've emphasized a couple of times that things vary from borough to borough. And I've, with this whole right to buy change November of last year, I've been doing way more right to buy mortgages than I had done in the previous 2 years, let's say. And one of the things that I've found is every council works differently. I have one council that everything is super manual, everything's done paper and fax machines, and then you have others that are more digital. So in you bringing out the point around doing your research, it ties into what I was saying at the very beginning. This is not necessarily a get-rich-quick scheme. If you're looking to get into property investing, HMOs, shared living, anything like that, make sure that you're surrounding yourself with professionals. And I know Tapiwa and I are in several WhatsApp groups. We're in the Smart Landlords group. I think we're in the Buy the Block WhatsApp group as well. And these are places where you have people like Tapiwa, like myself, that you have access to ask questions, to get just some directional advice before you speak to a professional. But it's important that you always speak to a professional. So us WhatsApping each other is a good way to get a concept or understand a theory. But how it is applied will always be very unique. So throughout these shows, we can consistently and constantly say, make sure you speak to a professional. We're not giving you legal advice. We're not giving you financial advice. We're just talking through some concepts and some strategies that you can then speak to someone that understands your circumstances and can give you the best advice. So as it relates to supported living, you know a lot about that. What are some strategies that you see people using in order to get into supported living? And how difficult is it to get up and running?
I think it's becoming increasingly difficult because a lot of people, as I said, over the last couple of years, a lot of people have transitioned or are trying to transition into supported living. And it's becoming a bit of a crowded space. And because it's starting to become a bit of a crowded space, why should I work with you as opposed to working with the next person? But I think if you can always show value, and you can always understand the needs of your customer, whether your customer is the tenant that's going to be living there, whether your customer is the care provider that's going to be partnering with you, whether you're providing directly to someone like a Circle or a Mears on the asylum seekers route, understand what their needs are and make sure that you are meeting the need of the customer. I think in many cases, if you can do that, you'll be at least a good few steps ahead. I think what often happens in many cases, and I've been guilty of this as well, is that you have a property and then you want to figure out, okay, who can I get rid of this property to and make some money? Whereas it should actually be probably the other way around, where you understand the need and then secure a property to meet the need of the end customer.
You mentioned something earlier. You said that some people view that the supported living space as recession proof. What did you mean by that?
So when I say recession proof, I mean that regardless of what's happening in the wider market, whether interest rates are high, interest rates are low, things are up, things are down, Trump is in, Trump is out, whatever the case might be, you continue to earn money and you can probably predict within a fair margin what sort of money you're going to be earning. As I said, I gave the example. It's an extreme example, I know, but it's something relatively recent that most of us will remember, that during COVID, when it was Boris, I think, was prime minister at the time, basically said people don't have to pay rent. Of course, people stopped paying rent, because why should they pay rent if they don't have to? And as landlords, obviously that's a bit of a difficult situation, because yes, we had the option to take payment breaks on mortgages and all the rest of it. But once you take that break, it potentially could have an effect in the future when you go to renew your product or apply for different products or try and invest in other things. That payment break is going to be on your record, albeit it was during COVID, albeit the government had underwritten it. But nonetheless, it still sits on your record and can affect what you are doing. So people view supported living as something that's recession proof, i.e., regardless of what's happening in the wider market, it's government backed. Therefore, the government will continue paying, whether directly or through private providers, to make sure that those vulnerable people that need to be supported continue to have support.
So using supported living as a strategy seems like there are some benefits. So that recession proof, and I understand what you mean by that ability to be able to have a customer, which is the government in some cases, who will always need to provide these services, having that as one of the potential clients is always going to be a positive thing. Now, I transitioned from wealth management into mortgages over the last 5 to 6 years, because I was looking at trying to do something that with the introduction of AI, with the introduction of new regulations, with the changing workforce, would have some type of runway between then and when I look to retire. So if you're looking at property strategies, you need to consider more than just, can I get a mortgage? So I explained how to get the mortgage. To a degree, that's the easy part. Because if you've been somewhat wise with your finances, if you've maintained your credit score, if you've done those fundamentals well, banks will lend to you. And even if you haven't done some of those fundamentals well, there's specialist lenders that will still lend to you. But what's important is that you're considering the long-term strategy. So being online, you will see that there are people out there that are going to tell you, well, listen, come on my course. I'll tell you how to flip properties, or come on my course, or download my free book, which is just the introduction to a sales funnel. But they'll tell you all of these things. Now, I believe you have an academy. So what separates you and what you do, or what's your unique selling point around how you support people in getting up and running in supported living as a property investment strategy?
Great question. So before we get to the academy and the support around that, I just want to touch on something, and I suppose this is also part of it, which is important, is that if you are seriously looking to give your property over to a supported living provider, or you want to become a supported living provider, it's important that you get the appropriate mortgage products. There are different mortgages out there designed for different purposes. Gone are the days where you can just get a regular buy to let and let it go for supported living. Because God forbid something goes wrong and they then discover that you had let that property to supported living tenants or to a supported living provider and you didn't disclose, it potentially becomes mortgage fraud. And obviously for us investors, some of you might be very cash rich and you might not need to borrow. But for the rest of us that do need to borrow, you need to have a clean record so that every time you apply for borrowing, there aren't any, for lack of a better term, any black marks against your record or any queries of you doing mortgage fraud. Now,
okay, let's unpack this, because this is one of those areas that I talk about a lot, and I probably lose a lot of clients because of my approach to doing business. So, as I said at the very beginning, I've done 10 years of debt collection. I used to be in the pre-litigation department for HSBC many moons ago. So I was one of the people that was making sure that we had exhausted every option of keeping someone in their home. So I've been in people's living rooms when we have to figure out how we're going to keep them in the home. The kid is running around, the dog is running around. It's not a comfortable place to be. And what I found is quite often, people put themselves in those situations where they could be at risk of losing their home. So what I mean by that, and you said this, Tapiwa, like, it's about getting the right products. It's about understanding that you cannot fool the bank. All right. So as much as people think you're fooling a bank when you take out a mortgage for one purpose and you do something else, especially in the day of AI, it's so easy for them to figure out what's going on. Okay. So I kind of feel, as with a lot of things in society, there'll be a flavor of the month. So you'll have a thing that is happening that the government or the banks will almost turn a blind eye to until it becomes a hot topic. And so you always want to make sure that you do things decent and in order. It may cost you a little bit more. It may make it a little bit more challenging, but you want to make sure that your paperwork is correct. You want to make sure that the mortgage you're taking out is reflective of what you genuinely are looking to do with the property, because it will come back and bite you. Now, whilst people have the perception that on the credit report that people are blacklisted and things of that nature, it's not that. It's just banks look at risk. Banks share information just like insurers share information. So there's enough products out there and there are enough specialist lenders out there that you can be upfront and honest and still get where you want to be. So I just want to emphasize what Tapiwa was saying. You want to make sure that you're thinking about what your long-term goal is and getting the appropriate product, that you are not in a position where you are abusing the system. And one of the key areas, and I'm going to say it, I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room, is purchasing a residential property and then renting it out, or getting a buy-to-let property and then living in it. Now, we do know that there are lenders that will have products that will allow you to have a buy-to-let property and have a relative live in there. Just do the right thing. Do the right thing. Lenders want to lend. Lenders want to be able to support you, but equally, they don't want to put themselves in a situation where they're at risk or they get picked up for not their doing their due diligence or their anti-money laundering, or because people want to hate banks, but where else can you sign a piece of paper and then £500,000 gets transferred from one place to another? So as much as we want to hate banks, we need them, unless of course you are Uncle Tapiwa and sitting on 5 million, right? No, but for most regular people, you're going to need banks, you're going to need a mortgage. So let's just make sure that we do things correctly and utilize people like Tapiwa that can give us the strategies, give us good guidance, and hold our hands through the process. And I know I picked up and I kind of interrupted your flow, so I'm going to hand back over to you. But I did want to draw that out and elaborate on that point a little bit more.
It's a very important point. And all I would say to round that off is, look, I'm not here to tell anybody how to run their business or how to run their investments, except to say, just know the risks, right? Yes. There's an old saying that we grew up on, which was know the ledge, have the knowledge. You remember, right? Have the knowledge to know what's involved. There are some risks that we necessarily take in business. There are some risks that maybe are just not worth it because the downside is potentially so huge that it outweighs the upside, and vice versa. So know what the risks are, be fully knowledgeable and educated, and understand what it is on both sides, and then take appropriate action as you need to. And sometimes people will do that, and sometimes people won't. But as Anthony said earlier, seek advice of professionals, and make sure that you're doing what works for you, whatever that's going to be. You asked a question, which was, what's my USP? I think my USP in supported living is that I'm one of maybe a handful of people that understand both sides in terms of being a property investor as well as being a care provider. There are many people who are one or the other, and a few people who are both and speak both languages and understand how to bring one side over to the other and vice versa. So I think that's where I sit in a little bit of a unique space within the two spaces, as it were, being able to kind of straddle both sides, as it were. The Supported Living Academy is really designed because of what I do, and because of the massive interest in supported living over the last few years. A lot of people would be approaching me, we want to do this and we want to do that. We want to get into supported living. How do we get into supported living? Or, we've got a couple of properties. We want to partner with supported living providers. How can we make that work? And I just realized that instead of me spending a lot of time and effort speaking to people on a one-to-one, let's create a group and create a bit of a community whereby we can actually share that knowledge as a group and as a community, and empower each other, and empower ourselves within that community to be able to grow our portfolios, whether that be a business portfolio or a property portfolio, and have some investments that not only make a profit, but also provide, a meaningful purpose. So kind of a profit with purpose kind of outlook, where we're doing good, but we're also getting paid, in some cases, quite well for doing good. So it's a win-win-win, which is, my favorite type of win. I'm not really into win-lose. I want win-win-win, so that everybody involved all around is winning and is doing well.
And I would say I appreciate your humility, because you said that you understand both sides, but in actually seeing you on panels and talking to you the times that I have, you have a broad knowledge as well. So I remember at the expo when we were having the panel, and I said this to you before the show, I could see that we had some amazing people, so I'm not taking anything away from them. But within their field, there were still things that you, not being a specialist in their field, there were bits of information that you could add to that. I talk a lot about what I call the 35 divide. And the 35 divide to me is, I find that a lot of people under the age of 35 work from a different paradigm than people over the age of 35 or people in their 50s like me. People in my age bracket kind of were brought up and told, you have to know the thing before you can say you know the thing. Plus, we didn't grow up with the history of the world in our pocket that we could kind of freestyle, fake it till we make it, and then just look on the phone and say, oh, yeah, this is what that thing is. We had to know the thing, right? Whereas people under 35, they work from the paradigm of, I can figure it out as I go along. I will fake it until I make it. My point in that is this: you have a depth of knowledge. So within what you're teaching people, they're going to get the added value of wisdom. And because you're actually doing it, it separates you out from a lot of the people that have done a 5-day course and now are online saying, I can help you 10x your property build business. And I I leave everyone to do what they do, right? So I'm not mad at them, and I actually admire the level of confidence
Right.
that those people
Right.
have. But I think the sweet spot is somewhere in the middle. So the sweet spot is for older people who are still like stuck, like what we say in the Bronx, stuck on stupid. So they're stuck in that phase of analysis paralysis. They're stuck in that stage of, I know I should talk to Tapiwa. I know that I put the things in place, but I'm going to research for the next 6 months, right? They're stuck in that versus the young people who just see a thing, jump on it, and will just surround themselves with the right people to and understanding that quite often you just need to know how to make the next step,
Sure.
right? And then the next step, and then the next step. You won't always have the full picture, and quite often you will learn more from your mistakes.
Absolutely.
So you'll have people who maybe, as we refer back to what happened during COVID as property landlords, getting stung by being really narrow in their view of how to invest in property has taught them that, all right, so I'm going to look at some HMOs, I'm going to look at different property investment strategies, and I'm going to make sure that I have qualified, knowledgeable people that not only have the book knowledge or the theoretical knowledge, but are doing it every day so they understand the nuances and can give me guidance and advice. So I'm bigging you up. I'm not doing it to be flattering, but because I speak to so many people who within 4 minutes of talking to them, I can see that they don't really know what they're talking about, right? And I always tell them game recognized game. So just
Absolutely.
bring the real to say, look, I just did this course and I understand in theory how to do this thing. I want you to be my first client. I'm not going to pay you like you've been doing it for 5 years. I'll pay you like I'm your first client,
Sure.
but I might be willing to give you a chance, but just let me know. But you're not that guy. You are someone that is experienced and has the knowledge and is doing it practically. So if somebody wanted to work with you or wanted to join the course or the academy, how would they go about that?
I'm easy to find. Just reach out to me. I'm the same on all socials at Tapiwa Madovi. For those that don't know how to
See,
spell,
you
so
see how quickly that worked, right?
that's hilarious. So that's Tapiwa, M for mother, A-D for dog, O-V-I. Same on all socials. So yeah, connect, hit me up. Let's talk. I'm here to help, here to work with people. I'm really here to try and
And see,
help people
the people are
get
trying
through
to
what they
get
need to
through
get
to
through.
you right now.
People trying to get through to me straight away. I love it.
You
I didn't
see
even
how
give
this
out the phone
works.
number.
So, if you talk me through the journey, so what are some of the things that you want to know or want the person to be to have in place in advance of connecting with you or contacting you?
I mean, have an idea of where you're trying to get to, right? The Seven Habits is one of my favorite books ever. It's probably the book I've gifted and referred to people more than anything else ever. And I've always said to people, start with the end in mind, which is one of the habits from Stephen Covey's book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, which is a recommendation for those that may not have read it. So start with the end in mind. What are you trying to achieve? Where are you trying to get to? So if we know that, then I can help you to map out, how to, if you're an A now, how do we get to Z? So I think that's always important. The other thing that people always come to me asking is, okay, I want to get into supported living. Which side of supported living should I get into? Should I do children? Should I do adults? Should I do mental health? Should I do asylum seekers? Should I do this? Should I do that? My retort back to them is always, well, which of those speak to you in some way, or which of those do you have some sort of affinity to, or some sort of connection to, or some sort of knowledge of? Because like any journey, there's going to be a lot to learn. So kind of flatten that curve as much as you can by starting with something that you already have some familiarity in. And outside of that, we can, every other situation we can work with. I think it's important to be open, to be willing to learn, and to be willing to be obviously willing to do the hard work. I think people sometimes think that supported living is an easy way to make money. I tell people up front, there are easier ways to make money out there. But if you want to make good money, you want to make good money slow, this is a good place to do that. And as I said earlier, you can make some money for yourself as well as do good for other people. So it ticks multiple boxes at the same time. It's a win-win-win. It's a win for the people that you're providing accommodation for, looking after. It's a win for yourself because you build yourself, a nice little nest egg. It's a win for the local authorities and those other departments that also need somebody to be able to provide accommodation and support for these people. So it's a nice 360 way of doing business where multiple people are benefiting from that one thing.
So what would you say because I'm very much into avatars, not the movie, but into making sure that I can add the most value to the people that I work with by finding people who have similar mindsets, people who are going to value what I do, people that are actually going to listen to what I tell them to do. So I do try to create a level of friction from people finding out who I am to working with me that people can self-select. That's a long-winded way of saying, what does your ideal client look like? The people that are going to find the success sooner and really value what you can do for them.
I think it typically tends to be two types of people. Either people who are professionals, so on the provider side, people who are professionals in some sort of health or social care field. So let's say, for example, somebody who's been a social worker for 10, 20 years, but has never ran a business and is interested in bringing that social work knowledge into a business framework and actually being a supported living provider. And then on the other side, you've got people who are maybe buy-to-let investors or people that maybe are buying their first investment property, but actually want to take that down the supported living route and are not clear on what the parameters are and how best to achieve that. So those are the two people that I typically work with most times.
Okay. And what type of team does someone need in order to get up and running? So they add the academy, they contact me about getting a mortgage. Who else do they need in their team?
You need a good broker, which obviously would be someone like yourself. You need a good, what do you want to call them, a builder or someone who's, who can do some light, either maintenance or painting and not more than painting and decorating. Because depending on the property that you end up with, it may need a refurb. It may need some adaptations for it to be suitable for supported living. It may need things like fire alarms, fire doors, and things of that nature. Maybe, ramps if it's going to be people that have got mobility issues and so on and so forth. So definitely going to need a broker. You're going to need some sort of builder. It would be good to have somebody like myself who can kind of guide you through the process. And somebody within your own team who's willing. Well, you need somebody who's quite organized. So if you're not that, then have somebody who, is able to get things organized and able to keep things on track. And you need somebody who's a bit, what's the right word? Who's willing to kind of put their head through walls just to get things done when things are getting a little bit difficult. A bit of determination, a bit of grit, just to get things done. Because as I said earlier, it's not necessarily going to be a simple and straightforward route. Sometimes, like in all things, curveballs are going to come up, things are going to go left. I remember, for example, where I'm actually sat now, when we were renovating this place, I walked in one day and I was like, I could hear rain. And I thought, hold on a second, it's not raining outside. But I've just walked in and I can hear rain. So it was in the middle of a refurb, a pipe had burst, and there was literally rain in the house. And that set us back a good 6 months. And yeah, massive knock-on effect because the local authority expected the property to be finished at a certain time. They've got people that they've prepared to be moving into the property at a certain time. Everything is all but agreed. A lot of work has been done. You're just finishing off the refurb, and then all of a sudden it's raining in the house So you can imagine how much work needs to go back to brick and start again. So yeah, stuff goes left. Insurance, clearly, obviously, because when stuff goes left like that, insurance will help you out if you've got a good policy. And again, it's similar to what we were saying earlier about the mortgages, that it's all well and good getting the cheapest product until you need it.
Yeah.
When you need it, then you know yourself.
The way that
smart you're not.
The way that I explain it to people is when people are searching for the product, they think about the price. When people need to use the product, they think about the service.
Exactly.
So as part of my role as a mortgage broker, I will make sure that I have the conversation with you about protection, will help you with your building insurance, etc. Because it is all about being informed, being prepared. And it sounds like if you're going to use this as a property strategy, you need a level of resilience, and you need a level of patience. So just do a quick 1-minute commercial for who you are and what you do.
Hi, I'm Tapiwa. I am a supported living provider. I work with people who are building and growing their supported living provisions. Through the Supported Living Academy, we can help you to put the right structures in place, grow, develop. For those of you that are looking for franchises for your supported living businesses, that's also something that we've started to do. So we can also talk about that. And yeah, pretty much anything to do with supported living. I'm open to connecting with people, working with people, and helping people to grow and to develop. That's me.
And we will have your information in the description. It's been really good having you. I know you and I could talk for probably 2 hours, right? And we didn't get into the freestyle, but we can always do that another time. It was great having you. And I just would encourage anybody that has questions to reach out to Tapiwa. Thank you for being here, and we will be making sure that my information is available, Tapiwa's information is available, and anyone that reaches out to us, if you also need to know about some really great networks to join, WhatsApp groups, we can share that information with you. And you spoke about several books that you have read, and we'll have that information in the description as well. But I also, again, want to talk about my book. My most recent book is it's been a labor of love. It's actually a book that was 30 years in the making, but I didn't realize it at the time. So it's called A Mortgage is a Really Big Loan. And what I do is I break down some complex financial terminology and concepts into everyday language. It came about from me actually trying to explain to someone what a mortgage is. And I said, essentially, it's a really big loan, right? And so financial literacy is really important. I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm the first person to write a book to support with financial literacy. There's lots of information out there. There's some great business books. It's for us to utilize and access the information. It's for us, as you said, Tapiwa, to gift these things. So it's a book. Like if you go to the physical book, it's something that you can then gift to somebody or earmark a page and say, take a look at this. Because it does say that the people perish for a lack of knowledge. In 2025, it's not the lack of knowledge as far as the lack of access to knowledge. It's an apathy that we have now where everything is so readily available that quite often we don't access it because it's so easy to access.
Yeah.
I would encourage everybody to just try to learn something new, be a lifelong learner. If you're looking at different property strategies, consider what Tapiwa has talked about today. Make sure you do your due diligence. And we appreciate everybody that tuned in. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. I want to hear your comments in the comments section. And if you have any suggestions for shows that we can do in the future, be sure to share those show ideas with me. My name is Anthony Lindsay, and I've been in finance for over 30 years, so I know a thing or two.